Hey y'all, welcome back to episode 2 of Guest Talk Podcast. This is our introduction series, and in this episode we will be meeting the 3 older siblings. So we're just going to get right into it and let them introduce themselves.
Alright, well, I guess I'll introduce myself first. My name is Shamaar. I'm the oldest of the bunch. Then one of 9, so I mean that's so I'll kick it over to number 2.
Hey guys, I'm Michelle, and the second oldest, and I am the first half of that guy over there.
Depends on which screen you're on and how you're looking at it, because, I mean, you are to my right.
Yeah, you got it.
Whatever.
Because we have to be pointing
Anyway.
Yeah.
I am like the third of the bunch. You know. Yeah, you do know. That's me.
Yeah. Okay. So, with the 3 oldest, I have a couple of questions. We're going to start off with Shamaar answering the first one.
Okay.
So, what would you say it's like being the oldest of all 9? You know, being the oldest of a big family.
Also, well, at this point, there's no difference. Nothing really matters. I feel like at this point in our lives, we're all pretty much grown for the most part. But I will say, growing up, I mean, once these 2 showed up, there was never a dull moment. You know, there was always there was no such thing as privacy at that point.
You're welcome.
Oh,
You're welcome.
No, thank you. No, seriously, from the bottom of my heart. Because you know, like all the toys that belong to me now belong to us, and I had to learn that. I had to learn. You know, you had to learn things like sharing, and that was a difficult thing starting off. But you know what? I've become a better person because of it. A very sharing person at this point in my life. It only took 8 other children to help bring that out of me. And so I will say there's a lot of you learn responsibility early. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole concept. You know, think about the things biblically, where we go back to Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
And Cain asked the question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Mm-hmm. Now, he was being sarcastic with God when he said that, but the mindset of "Am I my brother's keeper?" is something that you learn.
Yeah. And
so that's something I had to learn growing up, that my brothers and sisters are my responsibility, whether or not I'm watching them or not watching them. The expectation is, I have to help take care of them.
Yeah. I'm
not necessarily raising them, but I'm looking out for them.
Yeah.
Now, my brothers and sisters will say that I'm, it probably they felt maybe I was more of a snitch more than anything else, but it was me looking out for their best interest. Mm-hmm. Now, I was probably snitching on them, but looking back now, it was
taking all your toys.
So. It was in their best interest that I was telling on them, so that they can receive some correction. Mm-hmm. Plus I wasn't trying to get a butt whooping for stuff they did, because that happened.
Yeah.
So, those are lessons that you learn, and I think it helps to build things such as leadership and character.
For sure. So, Michelle, what was it like being the oldest sister? Because I feel like a sister role, when you're the oldest sister, you just like mommy, I feel like. So
absolutely. I was mommy number 2. I was mommy number 2. I had to make sure that the kids were dressed and had their clothes together for school, and every time we had to go out, I had to do hair. Then I did all the cleaning. Then I didn't do the cooking, because that's what Shamaar did, all the cooking, thankfully. But I was mom number 2. Like, I had to babysit. I didn't have the luxury of enjoying childhood for a very long time, because of the responsibility of being the oldest girl. came with taking care of all of the siblings under me.
Okay. Now, Michael, what would
Man,
it
he
be like
wasn't
for
my
you
mama,
being
so I don't
one of the
know.
oldest? Anyhow, I mean, you came in third, but I feel like y'all are twins. Not really third, I guess. You still were the oldest and
He
had
wasn't my mama.
things to do.
Man, I
He
whipped
wasn't
your
my mama.
tail.
I don't know whose mama she's talking about. She wasn't my mama.
Whipping your tail.
You know what
I
I'm
got
I don't remember
20
y'all being
you
nobody,
know.
but she was always doing our hair and popping us with the hairbrush. But you know,
saying? Swearing that she was somebody's mom, exactly. She never tried me, though. But,
Boy, I used to beat you up. I didn't have to be your mom. I beat you up. And then I got in trouble
No, it's
for
just
it.
because she was a violent person with a violent personality, so she was just fighting people from the womb.
that's why y'all 10 minutes apart.
That
Because she
is
had to
the story.
fight
I
him
was
to get out
fighting.
first.
Yeah. I've heard that
But,
story a million times. Get him! Get her! Hit her back! Hit her back! And he would never hit me back and decided to move there watching on the sonogram. And I'm just kicking him. Yeah, it was. I was born this way.
So, Michael, what was it like for you being one of the older siblings and
Being stuffed in
and
that
being
corner
this
of
big
the uterus.
family?
I mean, I do feel like, yeah, we definitely, I think all of us, you know, who are of the older three, kind of felt more of the responsibility, you know, on us than the younger three. Expectations were different, so, you know, we saw a lot, you know, heard a lot more than, you know, the other six, but it was, even though I was the younger of the three, you know, the top three, you know, there was still, you know, expectation, you know, on us to assist and, you know, assist around the house. It wasn't like we was, you know, kick back and do nothing. Like, no, everybody had their chores to do, and, you know, even if it was holding the other siblings accountable to make sure they got their chores done, like, that was the top three. We were always, I was somebody's daddy, okay? That's all. I was somebody's daddy.
He was not anybody's daddy.
I don't remember Michael being like bossy like that or anything like that. Like
He wasn't.
I remember
Shamaar
Shamaar
was
cooking. I
yelling
remember
at-
Michelle popping us, and I know Michael. To me, in my memory, he was just like so chill.
I had to beat some butts every now and then. I had to pull the gun out every now and then, so.
That's what I'm saying. I was just like, hey, chill.
Like, they
Yeah.
tried Shamaar, but I didn't have to hit y'all because y'all actually listened to me. Y'all were threatened by the tone of my voice.
But they listened to me too.
They did. They listened to you because you were just
I
talking.
know.
Just because you were tall.
Oh, because I was tall.
Okay, let's go to this next question. Now, this question is a little, it's a packed question. It got a lot of depth to this question, I guess. Like, it's a lot to answer in one. So, what would you say is, we'll start with Shamaar, you can answer first. What would you say is your perspective on life before moving to Edgewood? Because, like, you moved around a lot. Y'all was in Hawaii at a certain point. Y'all was back and forth between Philly and Maryland at different times. You were homeless at a time. And also growing up in a Christian household with, you know, so what would you say is your perspective from before moving to Edgewood and then, like, growing up in a Christian household? Like, you know, including that in your answer.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll say first and foremost, growing up in a Christian household, I mean, it's what we knew.
Yeah.
As far back as I could remember, mom and dad have always been saved. As far as as far back as I can think.
Yeah.
And if they weren't, we didn't know what that meant because they at the very least went to church or knew something about church. You know, growing up, grandma went to church.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in her house for a good in our early years, so we knew something about somebody going to church. So from Jump Street, we grew up in a Christian household, so it was what we knew. It's Dad, whether or not we went to Reverend Hill's church in Philly when Mom would have the prayer nights, and we'd be sleep under the chairs because they up praying all night at Reverend Hill's church. Or when we went to City of Refuge, Pastor Anderson's church in Hawaii. Those were like our first experiences when it came to church. And what we saw in church, we also saw at home. Yeah. Dad, preached, he would, minister at church, and then he would minister at home. So we never had like culture shock. Just because we were out of church, church was never allowed to be out of us. You guys can attest to how, we would, I know at least myself, I know Michelle maybe would join in with me. Mike, sometimes maybe we would be on the bus talking about, Bible scriptures on the bus, or like, telling them to, let's put, we're putting off this, secular music, this worldly music on y'all playing this worldly music on the school bus. Trying to take some form of stand, because as far as we knew, the Christian culture was it. Yeah. And I think as we got older, I think we, at least I don't know myself, kind of calmed down a little bit. But you wanted to represent your culture, and for us, the Christian culture was our culture. Yeah. We were proud to be Christians. We was, we would sing Christian songs, and do, especially when we first learned about Christian rap, man, we would sing DC Talk on the school bus. I'm dating myself there for anybody who knows who DC Talk is. DOC, Disciples of Christ. So I mean that it was.
DC Talk was Toby.
Yeah, Toby Mac.
DC Talk is Toby. Yeah.
Old school Toby Mac.
But that is, that for us, that was the culture. Whether or not we were homeless, whether or not we were in Philly, Hawaii, or living in Maryland, that was the culture for us. And I think that lended to our perspective of God got us. Yeah. Regardless of the situation. Yeah. Now I'll admit I didn't want to move back to Maryland, because at the time we moved back, I was in my senior year of high school. Oh. And so that last time we moved back, I'm like, let me finish
school.
Let me finish my senior year. I'll live in South Philly. All I'm doing is going back to school, just going to school. Let me finish my senior year. I worked hard. I was going to be, valedictorian of the school. I was there. Yeah. And
you graduated what, 2003?
2002.
Got us throwing ages out there now, huh?
Yep, class of 02. And so for me, I'm changing. I'd finally had some type of stability in my life. Yeah. I've been in at least 10 different schools growing up. And so finally I'm in this one school, all types of craziness maybe are going on in this school, but I'm not going to put their name out there. I mean, they're defunct now, but there's a lot of legal issues that went on with this particular school when I was in high school. But we finally made it through, and I think things had finally settled down for us. And I was preparing to graduate from the one high school that I've been to the entire time. I was there from 9th grade. I made it all the way to senior year, and I'm like, I want to finish this out. And all of that was upended, and I finished senior year in Maryland. Yeah. And it was okay. But for me, it was like, that one extra school that just now is like 11 schools instead of the 10. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that comes with the territory of being a military brat and having to move around from place to place. And so that was my, I guess, only issue with coming back to Maryland when we did, and at least trying to make the best of it, feeling like hey, I get to be the new guy again. Nobody here knows me. Trying to make the best of it. Yeah. But looking back on it, it's inconsequential now at this point. When you're in high school, every little thing is the end of the world. It's the biggest thing. Yeah. Looking back on it now, it's like, all right, well, high school is so far away, and things being what they are and how they happen. I mean, obviously, it felt like why come back, and then tragedy happened while we're in Maryland.
Yeah, so we'll get there.
We'll get there,
we'll get there. So, go ahead, Michelle. What would you say is your perspective on life before moving to Edgewood, with y'all moving around a lot, homelessness, just the whole situation, like whatever your perspective before we got to Edgewood, and yeah.
So I mean, much like Shamaar, like we moved around a lot, and I went to 8 different schools that I can't remember before graduating high school. So I hated that. I hated that we were constantly moving, constantly. We could never settle down into one space. So I have friends that are just all over the place. I couldn't really just keep that same group of friends, because as kids, back then we didn't have cell phones, and how we're going to text or communicate, it just wasn't the same level of communication as it is today, or access to that type of communication. So, it was a lot of starting over, starting new, and I hated that. I hated that every time, but that was the life. That was what we knew as military brats. And as far as homelessness, though, the crazy thing is, I didn't even realize we were homeless when we were homeless. I thought we were just taking road trips and staying in motels for fun. Because I believe Daddy, he did a really good job, and Mommy did a really good job at sheltering us from the reality of what was really happening, because they did not want us to feel the worry, or the concern. So they did not tell us, like, hey guys, we're homeless. They was just like, okay, we're going to pack up and we're going to go to this motel, Econo Lodge, or whatever, Then after a time of being at different extended stays, and it was like, okay, now we're taking these road trips, it felt like, right? We would go into these welcome centers, and use the bathroom, and I just remember washing up at the sinks, wiping off and washing up, and grabbing some food and getting back in the car, and we would just be on these long road trips.
Remember we get the giant sub from Wawa, the giant sub.
They don't do that no more. I ain't seen Wawa make them.
That was a treat.
Right, we thinking this was great.
Wawa, it was the 2-footer.
Yeah.
That 2-foot long, yes. How could I forget the 2-foot long hoagie? That was the highlight of every time we had to take our road trips. We're gonna go to Wawa. And didn't realize that, we were actually homeless, though. And the reason why we were eating at Wawa is because that's all our dad was able to scrounge up enough money for to get us, so he could have enough food to feed all of us. Got the 2-foot long hoagie from Wawa. So I didn't know, we were homeless. I was not aware. It didn't hit me in processing that we were actually homeless until I was an adult. Once I started going to therapy in 2017, January of 2017, that's when it I fully processed, wait a minute, this whole time, the reason why my dad would be at the gas station for so long, because, y'all remember how long we be at the gas station?
Yeah, just sitting in the car.
We'd be at the gas station forever. And then I finally realized why we were there so long, because he was paying, and I was getting enough money to put gas in the car and go, wow, I to get us some food. I didn't know when we were kids what was happening, but it made me I hate gas stations. I will not put gas in my car. I will wait until it's all the way on me, and then be like, dang it, I gotta go to the gas station. Or I'll make my brother do it, because I hate going to the gas station because of those moments we stayed at the gas station for ever. Like, I hated it. But yeah, once in 2017, I fully processed that the reason why we were even at the gas station and what was happening. Like, our father was panhandling. The first time that it hit me was in 2009 when I was doing a dinner for the children from Salem, the Children's Trust. And when we were talking, when I was, talking with the children at the dinner, that was the first time I realized the level of homelessness that we had overcome and the challenges that we had overcome. And then from 2009 to 2017, during that time, I began to have slow moments of like realizations. And so in 2017, I had the full view of it all. So my heart broke in a way for our parents because of the burden that they had to carry. And it was about 6 or 7 of us at that time, right? Was it 6 of us?
Mommy said that
or it was
she had
5
just
of
had
us
David.
and Mommy was pregnant with
She had just had
6.
David, and she didn't have. She
She
found out
was,
she was pregnant with me.
just
Well,
had David. David is number 6, right?
Yeah.
So it was 6, and she was pregnant with you.
Mm-hmm.
So she had just had David, but she got pregnant. By the time we were in all of that, transition, driving, taking these road trips, sleeping in our station wagon. Remember when Daddy would lay us in the station wagon head to toe? Sleeping in the station wagon, and Mommy pregnant, sleeping in the front seat, reclined back. It took years from 2009 to 2017 for me to have a full realization of all that was really occurring.
Yeah.
As we were as children, that we have suffered homelessness, and that we were living out of our car, we were washing up at welcome centers and panhandling to eat. Like, I had no idea. Daddy would make it so fun. He would, on these road trips, he would have us cracking jokes. You know what I'm saying? Like, he would make it so fun that it never felt like we didn't have a home. At least for me, I didn't feel like we didn't have a home. I didn't feel like we were homeless. I felt like we road tripping. It's the longest road trip ever, but we road tripping, and this is fun. We get to eat waffles. Like, yeah.
Okay. So, Michael, what would you say is your perspective from life before we moved to Edgewood, and growing in a Christian home, being homeless, the whole 9? So all of that life before Edgewood, like, sum it up in your perspective of it.
Life before Edgewood. I mean, there were parts of it that were good. There were parts of it that were tough. I would say the good parts was definitely while Daddy was still in active service for the military. Life was good. It's like you didn't have nothing to worry about. A government check was going cash. You know what I'm saying?
Man, we probably thought we was rich. We was living good.
And after he got out of the military, it was a question of, I don't even know how they made the determination of, going back to Philly or staying in Maryland or not. But after we went back to Philly, I felt like it was just going to be like just for a temporary kind of thing, but that was like a long. What was that like?
7 years.
7 years, 6 years, 7 years, and I was just like, bruh. And so it was just, but it was never. So for me, even on the like, oh, you were homeless for a moment of time. Like, Michelle gave me that realization as an adult. Like, yeah, bro, he was homeless. I was like, who was homeless? I was never homeless. Who did y'all live with? You know what I'm saying? But like I think you said, like, there were things that, daddy knew, had enough wisdom to know like how to navigate to protect us even in, a state where he probably felt. I mean, just can imagine like having kids and you're responsible, you know what I'm saying? And you're like, dang, what do I do? You know what I mean? But I'm gonna go and take. I mean, just think of how humble or how low he had to be or even feel in those moments of asking for just some change so I could feed my kids, and what people would actually be thinking, like, is he actually going to do that, and he going to go in here and, you know what I'm saying?
And even to fill up the tank, he had to panhandle to put gas in his car.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So, those memories I don't have, like, because I'm like, who was home? Like, I remember, for me, we was just always on the trip, we was just always in the car, we was always in another hotel, hanging out, like, but then I was like, wait, as I remember, like, we was going to school from the hotel. Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait a second, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it still didn't feel like, we're just waiting to move back to Philly. Like, it was always an explanation that made it make sense even for our young minds. And then once we got back to Philly, it was still kind of, it wasn't weird, it just wasn't normal. So whatever you can find that's not normal but not weird, that's where it was at now. Because it was like we don't have a home, but we're staying at our, grandparents' house, and that was cool, because you got to see your cousins all the time.
Yeah.
So we was already a big family of siblings, so then it was like, well, just a couple more cousins, like, what's that going to change? Like, yes, y'all come over, and we are, it just felt like a long summer. When we was living at grandma's house, it just felt like a long summer, because nobody went home. Everybody lived at grandma's house.
Everybody lived at grandma's house, though, so, it's like, we just joined it in.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was like, all right, so where's it going? Nobody's going to notice if 8 more people showed up. Like, let's just go. That's what it kind of felt like. And, we were there for years, and then after leaving there and going, with Grandma Gladys and being there for, a couple of years, it almost became like, this is normal. You know what I'm saying? This is normal. It was so easy and so fluid. It was like, this is what family does, I guess. We're just going to get in here and sleep on the floor. I said, wait, what? Now I'm going to go, like, wait, what? We was going, what? Just for the summertime, right? No, that was how you was living, but yeah, and then after we, moved to Edgewood, it was like, what is this? It was a new life. It was a new world, a whole new world. It was a whole new world, and I think it established a lot for our lives the way they are now.
But I will say one thing, though, it was like we finally had a home when we moved to Edgewood.
Yeah.
So, after all the moving around, after all the, being displaced and the homelessness, and we finally moved to Edgewood, and it's like, this is our house. This is our backyard.
Yeah.
No one's taking this away from us. And for the time that we had it anyway, but at least in the mindset of the mentality, is from what I could see, it was like, this is our space. And then obviously we would open our doors to family who would move in with us, because we, for us that was normal. We moved in with family when we needed things. Then when family needed something, they would move in with us. Shadia, Modena.
Yeah.
I don't know, did Brats stay with us for a little bit? I don't remember Brats.
Sophia, Veronica,
Uncle
Raya.
Uncle
Uncle George
Uncle
did
Jeff.
for a short period of time. I don't know when or that was. I think I remember saying Uncle George at some point in time, but I don't remember when that was.
I don't think
No, he never did.
I don't think he ever stayed with us, but I mean, we
He would visit, but he never stayed.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I don't
Always had
think
his
it was like a long-term situation.
Yeah, and so that was, I think it at least for me, because that was kind of like at the end of my quote unquote childhood. That was at that point I went on college and kind of left home, came back and left again, but it was that was like the finishing touch. It was we finally got our house, we finally got our place, and so it was different.
Yeah. So I want to, because that kind of leads us to in a bit of like my next question, because a lot of what you guys said kind of really shows like Daddy's character in a sense. So I want to, starting with Shamaar again, touch on like how he was as a father and what it was like going through the grieving process of him being murdered and that situation. But first touch on him as a father and then going through that, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
I feel like it was, like Dad was one of my best friends. He, I learned everything from him. He was, he was somebody who I considered a mentor. I wanted to be like him. And I think part of it, I had no choice because I was like him. I'm like him today.
Yeah.
And so he and I had a lot in common. We had a lot of things that we enjoyed. I mean, he's the guy who turned me on to anime. So I didn't know it was anime at the time, but it was, it was the Japanese animation, the old cartoons that he brought into my life.
Yeah.
The kung fu movies, learning martial arts, things like that. Even my desire to write and get involved in media and things of that nature, that was Dad. And so it was like whatever idea I had, I knew I had somebody I could go to and be like, I got this idea. He would create stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I would feed off of his creativity. And so for me, he was just like, and I'll say, and I'll be honest, because I'll say growing up and being the oldest, I feel like my parents allowed me to see a little bit more than they allowed everyone else to see. And so I would say in my older years, especially after I came back from college, me and my dad had a few more heart-to-hearts, and I was able to see a little bit more of his vulnerability, a little bit more of his, I guess you could say, his more human side. Mm-hmm. Dads are invincible. Dads are geniuses.
Yeah.
My daddy knows everything. He can do anything. Mm-hmm. And as I
better than yours.
And once I feel like especially like once I turned like 18, and I feel like at that point it was like Dad kind of let me see him as just a man. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, you're Dad, but we began to have conversations because I guess for him he wanted to teach me about being a man.
Yeah.
And so to teach me about being a man, he had to teach me about the pitfalls that he had to go through.
Yeah.
The things that his struggles. Because it's like, okay, yes, now it's not just fun and games anymore. You are embarking on a new journey. Let me warn you. And so, understanding, one day you're going to want to be married. Let me show you what it's like behind the curtain of a marriage. Mm-hmm. Not in any way to pit me against Mom or vice versa. Mm-hmm. But I would say both Mom and Dad kind of pulled me in a little bit And especially because I was raised in that Christian household, raised in the Word, raised in prayer, it was like, hey, you're somebody who we at least trust that if we share this with you, you can pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that, I'm grateful because they never, I began to see that my parents respected me as an adult enough to say, we can come to you, you're our child, but we can come to you with this as an adult because we know you're going to handle it like an adult.
Yeah.
And so, even with that being said, when we lost him, and the reality of he's gone, it hit me hard because I felt like I'm in my early 20s, and you begin to realize like you really don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you guys raised me up. Okay, I'm an adult. I'm in my, I'm 19, 20 years old at the time. You really find out at that point you really don't know anything. When the person who you have looked to as your mentor and as your source of information is gone, you're a child again.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do I do now? What step do I take now? I'd always hoped that when it came time to present my wife to my family, that my dad would be there, that he would be able to see his grandchildren, and the realization that he will not be a part of all of the other things in my life that I'm getting ready to go through. It's tough. You don't just need your dad for the first 18 years of your life. And we didn't have him. At least I didn't have him for the first 6 years of my life, pretty much. Because mom and dad didn't get married until I was about 6 years old.
Yeah.
And he had left for the military pretty much right after I was born. So I didn't have him in my life for the first 6. And then to finally have him in my life again, I didn't want to let go of that. And then to lose him again, before I feel like I fully stepped into, adulthood. It was tough. I just I've cried my tears, Every now and then I think about my own sons, and I think about them not having their grandfather, and they ask questions, and they understand that that grandpa's in heaven, so they understand that.
I'm gonna interrupt you just for a second because Cooley recently asked me for the first time. I want to say maybe like 2 weeks ago. He said, "Mommy, where's your dad?" I said, and I didn't really know how to answer him right away because I'm like, he's 3. Like, when he asked me that, it was so random out the blue. So I explained to him that, my dad died and he's in heaven. But he just was like, okay, and, went back to playing. But I'm just like, I actually don't have to, explain it to him one day. And I never thought about it until that he's like, I have to explain it to my child.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Carter, my youngest, has said, I want to go to heaven so that I can see, because my wife's mother is also died when she was young, and he's like, I want to see my grandma and my grandpa, so I want to go to heaven. And I'm like, well, you gotta wait.
Yeah.
You gotta wait to see them. And my sons do not have a grandfather on either side of their family. And so I don't think they don't have that dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, we had both of our grandparents. Well, no, we had grandpa on mom's side, and then we had papa on dad's side. He was actually we didn't know, but he was our great grandfather.
Yeah.
And so we had papa and we had grandpa. Those were special relationships in our lives, or at least Pop Pop. Because I don't know if you two remember Pop Pop as much as I had him for a little bit longer.
I remember Pop Pop.
But you know, my relationship with my grandfather was very special.
Yeah.
You know, the stories, my interest in like history, a lot of it came from the stories he would tell me. You know, how he served in World War II, and I would sit in his room with him and, you know, pull out his medals and things of that nature. And I it's like that same feeling with my dad, the history, with Daddy, and just being able to, when I had questions, go to him, Dad, this is what I'm dealing with, and not being able to deal with, I would say, like, any issues that I have in my own marriage, maybe go to my dad and say, God, this is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So actually what I want to do is cut at this point, so we're going to go into part 2. Alright guys, so for the sake of time, we're going to be back for part 2. So stay tuned for that. We're going to close here, and yeah, we have more questions from Michelle and Michael, all their answers about what they, went through with losing Dad. So, yeah, we'll see y'all next time. Make sure y'all subscribe. Make sure you comment. Make sure you like. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media. We have Instagram. We got Rumble. We're on Facebook. All the links is going to be in the description. You guys can donate so we can get some more equipment for our podcast. Everything, all the links to everything will be all in the description. So yeah, be on the lookout for episode 3, part 2 of this conversation. Okay, bye.